Welcome to the Pastured Pig Podcast,
where we share the successes and challenges of raising pigs on pasture.
We talk to producers all over the country,
From small homesteads to large commercial pasture operations.
Whether you're new to pastured pigs or have been raising hogs for decades,
we hope you hear new ideas and new perspectives on pasturing hogs.
Here's your host, Troy McClung.
Well, hello everybody, and Happy New Year. I hope everyone is having a great start to the new year. At the point of recording this bumper, we are January the 2nd, and as you can tell, I've got a little bit of a frog in my throat, trying to get that cleared out. But anxious to get into the new year and see what that has to offer. So along those lines, let's talk about some changes that we've had, that we're going through with the Pastured Pig Podcast. You know, it's one of those things, you don't know if something's going to work until you try. Well, we're going to have to mix things a little bit because we're getting some bad feedback from YouTube when we post our video blog, our video podcast on YouTube on the Red Toolhouse channel. It's causing some algorithm things because it's just a totally different platform, hour-long or a totally different format, hour-long video, not as much interaction. So it's kind of dragging a lot of things down. So what we're going to do, we're still going to include our video podcast version, but we're going to just leave it on our Patreon channel. So if you support us on Patreon at the board level, then you'll have access to the video, ad-free, all that type of stuff, and be able to access that. That'll be the only place the video resides right now. I'm waiting to get some more data back from YouTube to see whether it would make sense to create a premium package on YouTube that would have just a very low fee, or just create a new YouTube channel for the Pastured Pig. I'd rather not do that and get into that situation of managing yet another YouTube channel. So we'll just have to see how that goes. So right now, that's our situation. So if you're listening to this version of the podcast, of course, it's going to have my typical intro stuff that we have, and then we'll get into our interview. If you don't want to hear all this front-end stuff, what we call bumpers, and you want to go straight to the interview, then, of course, just a sponsorship on Patreon at the SAL or board level will give you access to that. So that's where we're going to hang out right now. So the only thing that's really changing is you're just not going to be able to see the video on the Red Toolhouse YouTube channel. But looking at the view count on that and the amount of time people stay on that video, I don't think that's going to be a big splash in the pan to the negative anyway. Speaking of sponsors, I do just want to give a shout out, like we do each time, to our board tier sponsors. Thanks so much for John, Mark, Tina, Chuck, Fritz, Noah, Rob, and Matt. Appreciate you guys hanging in there, and really appreciate the support of all of our Patreon support levels. That's awesome that you guys take the time to part with some hard-earned money to support what we're doing here. Appreciate that. So updates going on here at Red Toolhouse. Nothing really exciting since we last did an episode. We've obviously gone through the holiday window there, so that was consuming a lot of time, enjoying time with family and friends, and just doing that kind of stuff. Things kind of slowed down between that Christmas and New Year break. And now that we're back ready to get fired up. In fact, speaking of fired up, today I got our last 3 pigs scheduled to go to the processor this month. So we will be pig-free, hopefully by the end of January. And that will allow some pastures to lay fallow and allow me to continue to do some work. I actually already started. I was getting excited about working on some things. So I was in one of the woodlots working on opening up some canopy, taking down some scrub stuff, leaving behind some hickory. That'll be good, protein producing, some mature hickory. That had one in particular that was pretty much a totem pole because it was in competition with a lot of other things around it. And that was creating just a tiniest little bit of branch canopy at the very, very top of this hickory. And this hickory is probably about 20 years old, so it should be a producer. But it just doesn't have much canopy at all. So being able to thin out the trees around it, I really am excited to see how fast that canopy just explodes. It should not only explode in width at the top, but branches all the way down should branch out. And of course, those are opportunities for more fruit production there, nut production in that situation. So excited to do that and just clear out some new areas. And it's just fun, been able to run the wood chipper and do all that type of stuff as well. So none of it's going to waste. Some of those actually, in fact, there's one poplar I cut down that he'll be going on the mill soon. So good stuff there. Well, for this episode 134, I don't necessarily have a sponsor on the hook right now, but I will say that if you're curious, check out our web store for the Red Tool House. That's store.redtoolhouse.com. We have some of our woodworking. Oh goodness, we have some of our woodworking and our apparel on there. So if you want to support us in that way, go check that out. We sold actually quite a few cutting boards over the holiday break. Christmas presents for people. So appreciate that. And we still have some things left. And, we've been playing around. I've been kind of had a renewed effort with my, with the workshop, trying to get things cleaned up, but also just, lots and lots of lumber in there. Just the years and years and years. 20 some years now of milling wood and storing wood and one time having a kiln, all those type of things. So I just don't throw stuff away. So all these wood scraps that I'm digging out, that's kind of, and I can't bring myself to just take them and put them on a burn pile. So it's like, well, let's do something with them. So we've been making projects and doing a variety of things. Made a whole bunch of, I made a whole bunch of wood trim for the house. That was Kelly's Christmas present. Because yes, even though we've been in this house 22 years, there are still some spots that don't have trim. So we did some really nice red oak trim in the foyer with a 9-inch crown molding, which has turned out pretty cool, I thought. And then we had some casement around our main windows in the dining room. That was all sugar maple, so it looked pretty good as well. Challenges, there were definitely challenges there, but I was excited with how it turned out in the end. So if you want to check out some woodworking stuff, just go to store.redtoolhouse.com. Okay, well, let's talk about our guest for episode 134, and that's James Cornwell. He's with Nine Pines Farm in Pennsylvania, and enjoyed talking with James. Had a good conversation about how he has been able to go full-time, even though they only have 12 acres that they own, but they're leasing a couple other parcels. And because of polyculture, he's primarily doing retail cuts with his pork, but he also does a lot of poultry. A lot of poultry. And that poultry is really helping with his cash flow. His wife has a cut flowers operation on the property as well, so that helps. So there's just neat opportunities for cash flow that show up at different times of the year. And that's really allowed him to go full-time, to get rid of the old off-farm day job and work full-time on that. So we talk about that structure, and of course, some of the nuances with leasing. We get a little deeper into that. So it's going to be a good conversation. I think you guys will like it. Before we get into that, just want to say if you know somebody who would like to be a podcast sponsor or would like to be on the podcast, you can just email me, troy@redtoolhouse.com, if they want to be a guest, ideally using the pre-screening information at thepasturedpig.com would be helpful. All right, well, let's get into our discussion with James, and I'll catch you guys on the backside. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Troy. Today, we are going north across the Mason-Dixon line into Pennsylvania to talk with James Cornwell from Nine Pine Farms. Welcome, James.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So how are things up in Pennsylvania this evening?
Well, we had a little bit of snow that didn't actually lay. So it's wet, muddy, and pretty bad. We just finished up turkeys here for Thanksgiving. And
no kidding. Yeah.
It's kind of a miserable day, but kind of good that we're almost done turkeys. So.
Yeah. We're getting into full swing mud season here in West Virginia, so it's just one of those things. So I want to talk to you about your turkeys and some other things here in a second, as we get drilled down into what we've got set up. But tell me a little bit about Nine Pine Farms. Maybe give me the overview of the farm layout and what you've got going on there, and then maybe we'll get a little bit into the history and what got you into this whole line of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're Nine Pines Farm. We have our main farm that's about 12 acres that we own, and then we lease another just shy of 30 that we lease. And on all that acreage, we raise pastured broilers, turkeys, We dabble a little bit in with ducks. Um, my wife my wife and my mother do a fresh cut flower operation. And of course, we do what I love, pigs. Pigs are my favorite. So,
Awesome. Awesome. So is that leased property? Is it adjacent to your 12 acres, or do you have two different parcels you're keeping track of?
no, it's two different parcels. Fortunately, it's extremely close. I actually leased the 20 acres from my former employer because we farm full time now. Um, so yeah, I leased that from where I used to work, which was conveniently about 2 miles away. And then this past year, we just picked up 10 acres from somebody at church. They had asked if we would want to hay it. Um, and I told them I'd love to, but there really isn't anything to hay on it. It's just, it had been a hay field for who knows how long, probably 30, 40 years. And I was able to twist their arm a little bit, and we raised some turkeys and some laying hens over there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Probably sounds like they probably weren't putting much back into cutting hay off of that, so it probably depleted the soil pretty badly. And
Yeah, overrun with broom sedge and
oh yeah,
grasses that I don't even really know what they are.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's my goodness. That's where rotating that poultry through there will really supercharge that pasture back up again.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. So yeah, so it sounds like, it's another thing I want to stick a pin in is leasing. I keep running into more and more people that are leasing, and without getting into the gory details and financial details of that, as we get further along, I do. So help me remember. I do want to talk to you about leasing and the pros and cons you've seen with leasing land.
Absolutely.
Okay. So starting with the 12 acre property there that you guys have, do you live on that 12 acres?
Yes. Yeah. So we bought our farm here. I guess technically you call it a farmette. Originally, it's just shy of 9 acres is what we first purchased. We bought it in 2016, and that's before we actually started farming. It was more of a homesteading kind of just honestly just me on a whim going out and doing what I wanted.
Right.
Not really talking to my wife about it. And then I don't know, I guess 4 or 5 years after we moved here, our neighbors who are, just adjacent from us, they were an elderly couple. We used to kind of just help them take care of the grass and stuff. They both had moved into a home, and their daughter approached us and asked if we would like to buy the property, and we were able to buy it. So it was nice. We got a few more acres and then a property that we can rent out, and we don't have to worry about people pulling into that driveway and somebody else complaining because it used to happen a lot.
Yeah. Well, excellent. Yeah. So a nice little expansion opportunity there. And then it sounds like some additional revenue with the dwelling that came with that additional tract. Awesome. Yep. So what got you into farming? You talked about you working full time elsewhere. So it's not. It doesn't sound like you're a multi-generational farmer. You had a day job, a real job somewhere else. So tell us a little bit about the genesis of that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I'd call myself a first generation once removed farmer. I actually did grow up in a very heavy farming atmosphere. My parents were divorced, and my father lived with my grandparents. My grandfather farmed, and then my uncle farmed as well. And I fell in love with it from an early age. I started working for my grandfather when I was about 8 years old, and worked for him, my uncle, and anybody else who would pay me. And sometimes I worked for a handful of dairies that they still owe me money. I mean, it's been 30 years, but I didn't care, to be honest with you. I loved doing it. My passion was always dairy. But that might be something in the future that we dabble in, but I didn't get into farming right after high school. It was always told me and my family, I rely heavily on my family for wisdom. And it was always, you don't want to get into farming. There's no money. You don't have land. So I actually joined the Navy right out of high school.
Oh yeah.
I told this story to somebody last evening. I actually got picked up by my recruiter at the dairy farm that I worked at, and I went to boot camp in my work clothes. Um,
That's
and
great.
you get a couple hours or a couple after you graduate boot camp. And I went to my school in Charleston, South Carolina. I opened up my bags with my, we call them civvies, your civilian clothes. I opened up my bag with my civilian clothes, and it smells like a dairy farm. And the
Right.
guy who turned out to be my roommate goes, "What's that smell?" I'm like, "Oh, that's the smell of home." And he goes, "No wonder you joined the Navy."
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so I always wanted to farm, very, always aspired to, but just never really thought that it would actually happen. Hold on, I just need to plug in my.
Sure. For our audio listeners, James is grabbing his power cord to his device so we don't lose him here.
One of our dogs sat on the power cord and it unplugged, and I noticed my screen.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I was actually
but yeah,
doing an interview today, and a lady had a cat in the back. Just it was hilarious. The tail kept coming up over her shoulder and doing this, and finally she blurred out the background so you couldn't see the cat tail. It was hilarious. But anyway,
yeah,
so anyway, so
yeah.
Navy. So you went into the Navy. You did that. And came out of the Navy, and I assume possibly using some of your Navy opportunity there. Did you go into a trade? Did you go to a
I
specific
did.
field? Okay.
Yeah, so I did about 9 years in the Navy. I was
Oh
a
wow.
Navy nuke on submarines. Um, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the Navy, but it was time for me to get out. My wife and I, wanted to start a family, and so I took the first decent job that was thrown at me, and essentially was I was a mechanic and a machinist for working in nuclear power plants and conventional power plants and refineries. We ended up in Burlington, New Jersey for about 7 years.
Hmm.
It was actually a pretty nice place to live, but it just wasn't home. And then in 2016, um, we were expecting our fourth child, and it was kind of one of those things. It's like, all right, we either need to move home now, or we're probably not going to move home. So that's where we bought where we live now, and it was my only requirement was it had to have a fireplace with wood stoves, and I had to have some land so I could get some kind of farming fix. And
Awesome.
that's pretty much how it started. I think the first spring we were here, um, I went I went down to the Agway down the road from us and just bought six or I think I bought a dozen pullets, and they were peeps at that point. Raised them up, had eggs, and then we got some meat birds, and then really what really changed my view of farming was first four pigs we ever got.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So let's talk. We'll go down that path now, and we'll come back to the
Sure.
polyculture aspect of that. So four pigs. So growing up on a dairy, you've got
Yeah.
chickens. What in the world possessed you to say, I need pigs now?
I always was fascinated with pigs. Um, I remember growing up with my grandfather. There was several times, because I spent the summer at the farm. There was a lot of times I actually went to an auction with him a couple times, and almost won these piglets for like next to nothing, like $2 or something ridiculous. And he's like, no, 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 we're not doing that. And I'm like, why not? I'll raise them. I'll take care of them. And he goes, yeah. He goes, but you go back to school in September, and then I had to take care of these pigs for you, and I got enough to do. I don't want to take care of pigs. All right, all right. So um, I just decided one day, I'm like, well, we got chickens, and we bought beef for my uncle. I'm like, well, I like pork, um, but even before we moved back home, I remember there's a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch influence where we live, and New Year's Day is something. It's kind of a tradition. A lot of people eat pork and sauerkraut,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember my wife made pork and sauerkraut once for New Year's Day, and I remember eating the pork and having this like aftertaste of corn. It was like I was eating cornmeal,
Mm.
and it's like this is not good. I mean, and this is before we even moved home and started our own farm, and I ever even thought about raising pigs. But when I got those 4 pigs, it was kind of on a whim, but it was, I had just kind of learned about pastured poultry, and by simple deduction, it's like, okay, well, if that's different, then pastured pork probably is going to be totally different too. Um, and yeah, it was pretty funny, the original setup we had. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the background on my Facebook page, not our farm's page, but my Facebook page, like my personal one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a picture of those 4 piglets, and I built this little kind of shed that, well, the attempt was to have it be movable, and what I wanted to do was have a place where they could go, a shed where I could have them go if we needed to pen them up if we were going out for leaving or something, and then if I wanted to move like another paddock, because we had no fencing, we didn't have any fencing at all. um, I could move a paddock, and I started with like poly tape, which, in my opinion, for pigs, it's like you might as well just put up baler twine because it doesn't shock them. It doesn't. But yeah, that was a fun experience. My wife's sitting here. She's laughing because
yeah.
it would always be, I was still working a job at the time, doing the farming and going back to school, using my GI Bill to get my MBA. And it was a day I went to a concert with my cousin, and I missed a phone call, and then my phone goes again. I'm like, all right. I look at it, and it's my wife. I'm like, oh, great. What could it be? Hey, the pigs are out. Somebody found them on a road 2 miles away. Neighbors were able to round them up, and we just put them in our barn, in the bottom section of our barn. Plenty of space for them, but they weren't really on pasture anymore. It was like, we can't deal with this. We can't do it. And they were about maybe a month away from being market weight, and so to sweeten the deal for them, I ended up buying. I was getting feed apples from about 25 miles west of us. It's all apple country, and you can get apples for like next to nothing. And so they were eating all the apples they wanted. I was like, hey, they're probably living a good life even though they're not outside. They still had plenty of sunshine and air, but it wasn't what I really wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's great. That first pig experience, so many people I talk to have something similar to that, and we are in the same boat too. When we started, it's like throw some pigs in the back of the car, and
Yep.
when we get home, we'll figure out what to do about fencing and management and all that type of stuff. Yeah, completely backwards. But yeah. So even despite that first pig experience, you've now ramped up. So tell me now, kind of give me this, where you are today and what you do here in the last year or so operating. How big is your pig operation?
Well, I kind of lose track. Not really lose track of how many pigs we do, but to say per year, it's a little difficult because I'm trying to sync up my sows now to where I'm breeding in the breeding for March, April time frame, and then I want them to also farrow on like end of August, early September time frame. But that's taken a little bit of playing around and separating out a boar and things like that. But for a while there, we had five sows, and it was about every other month we would farrow, and had some good experiences, had some bad ones. Really, unless you're buying, either a bred gilt or a proven sow from somebody, it's kind of a crapshoot. You don't know if that gilt that you hold back is going to be a good mother or not. And so now what we do is we still have the 5 sows. I've got a 6th that we're keeping. Actually just bred her this past week, called her just right in the nick of time. And so it'll be 6 sows, and they're kind of, some of them are kind of mutts, but there's predominantly, I have 2 different breeds that I kind of go to. I'm extremely fond of Tamworths. I just love their temperament. I love that they're very long. Their body is really long, so you get plenty of chops and bacon. Um, and we've had very good success with them as mothers. They've been fantastic. And the other breed that it's funny, I had a love hate relationship with them, but I've when you cross them, I mean, I hybrid vigor is a real thing. And so, kind of to backtrack a little bit, there was a lady that I was buying Gloucester Old Spot Tamworth crosses from, and we were just buying feeder pigs because I was still working at the time. I wanted to try to breed, but it's one of the very few things where I reserved myself and said, no, I need to wait and do this. If I'm gonna breed pigs, I want to do it right. I want to do it properly. I really want to actually learn. I want to do it systematically, not just have pigs breed and figure it out on the way, because that's a very costly venture to do. And so this lady, she's about 10 miles from us, and I was buying these feeder pigs from her, and I saw these pigs that didn't look like pigs. They were Mangalitsa's.
Yep.
And
You said the M word.
yeah, it was hilarious. I mean, they must have had 4 or 5 sows and litters running everywhere. I mean, there was piglets everywhere. Half of them weren't even like with the sows; they were just going in and out. I mean, it was like a pig paradise for me. But got to talking to her, and they had people that really wanted to buy them for a restaurant. That they had some restaurant deal in DC. I'm like, wow, that's really cool, and she kept going on about the meat quality of it. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And about a month and a half later, she called me and she said, hey, we lost our restaurant deal. That restaurant's going out of business. And we've got all these Mangalitsa piglets. She goes, what would you give me for if I could sell you, like, how many would you be able to take? And I was like, well, didn't really know much about the breed at all. Like, absolutely nothing about them. I was like, I don't know. I just threw out a number. I said, like, what I was paying for feeder piglets from another guy. I said, look, I'll give you $50. I'm like, I don't want the pigs, but I'll take them. If it's a good deal, I'll do it. I mean, how hard can it be to raise up some extra pigs? And so I got them and started doing research on them, on the meat, and no, it's a lard breed. And, kind of went through a handful of like forums on different pig breeds. And I started kind of panicking a little bit in my head. I'm like, oh,
Right.
like looking at it and saying, like, do not expect a good carcass yield if you're selling meat. Like, like sometimes the fat on it will be like 30% to 40% of that hanging meat. And I'm like, oh boy. But looking at pictures of it, I'm like, this looks like beef. Like, this is unreal. Like, this doesn't look like pork, And so I that first 5 or 6 that we had, I just grew them out with other pigs. Obviously, the growth on them is a lot slower. I didn't do anything special with, not feeding them or trying to feed them more hay or things like that. What I ended up doing was just letting them grow out naturally with the other hogs, and processed them. And that first time we had bacon was incredible. Yeah, my wife just goes, oh. I don't know what it was. I mean, it was the first time when people say something melts in your mouth, it's usually a euphemism. No, it literally did. It was like you didn't even have to chew it. It just dissolved. I was like, man, there's something here. There is something here. And I think we had them for about a year, and it took about a year to get them up to 300 pounds. They dressed out, and it was a lot of lard, a lot of fat. Didn't bother me because I love cooking with lard. And, but when you sell somebody, at that time we were only selling halves and wholes, and, I didn't feel right charging them and making a profit. I was like, well, it's an experiment. I break even. It's a learning experience. That's my profit, right? The learning experience of this breed. And, some time went by. It was probably a year or two. I did keep back one gilt and I wanted to cross her because I'm like, okay, let's just see what happens. And that was, everybody talks about how good Mangalitas are as mothers. Well, this, we call her Dolly Dingleberry. She would run around and she always had dingleberries. There's no other way to put it. Her tail was just always had manure on it. And, she was kind of friendly, and I knew she was bred. And this is, basically she had just savaged her entire litter. So, like, all right. So we just had her processed, and I kind of gave up on Mangalitas for a while. And I had the one customer in particular that bought that first round of Mangalitas that we did. He goes, I don't care what it costs. He goes, I love that. It was incredible. He's like, I can afford it. He goes, if it costs $2,000 for you to sell me a half, I don't care. I'll do it. It was so good, and I can't find it anywhere. I said, okay, I'll see about it. And at this point, this is a couple years after that experience. I had started to breed, and I'm like, all right, let me give it another shot. And I drove about 5 hours, found somebody that had a breeding pair. Nothing of pedigree, no papers, nothing like that. Just by looking at them, you could tell they were pretty much full blood Mangalitas, a blonde and a swallow belly, and they were from different lines. He assured me that. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And we kept the boar and we kept the gilt. I named the boar Prince Harry, and the gilt was Meghan Markle. And well, Prince Harry's no longer with us. He got super aggressive with me.
Oh, wow.
So we actually had him processed. We ended up eating him. And that's when I learned that boar taint is actually a real thing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. My kids never really complained. My wife never really complained. I never really complained. The smell was bad, but it's like, you got used to it, and we ate it and it tasted phenomenal. Yeah. It wasn't bad. But I had crossed Prince Harry with my matriarch sow from the Tamworths that I had, and that was actually her last litter. My matriarch sow Tammy. We crossed Prince Harry with her, and she had a litter, and we kept her. Kept one of her. We call her TJ, Tammy Jr., because she looks just like her except with long curly hair. So that's one of our hybrid, I guess you could say hybrid lines. So she's like 50% Mangalita. And then we kept Meghan Markle, and Meghan Markle is the funniest pig in the world. She's a firecracker. She probably doesn't weigh over 300 pounds. She's tiny. If anybody that knows what they're looking at with breeding pigs, which I know what I should keep for, she is the absolute polar opposite of what you should keep for breeding stock. But I have a Berkshire boar that I would cross with the Tamworth, did the Tamworth Berkshires for a while. And I crossed that Berkshire boar, who's probably every bit of 700 pounds, with Meghan Markle, and these piglets grow out phenomenally. I'm getting like a 300-pound carcass with not even choice feeding. I mean, kind of hand feeding and then just letting them ferociously graze, and feeding some old produce every now and then if it comes up. I'm getting really good grow outs for a Mangalitsa cross at 10 months, and they're dressing at like 225, 230.
Really?
It almost looks like, it doesn't look like full blood Mangalitsa, but you still have that very dark color. And once they hit about 300 pounds and they hit that like 10-month mark, you start really getting that nice marbling in the chops. And that's what sells for me. We don't do many markets. I kind of have I don't want to say an anti-farmers market policy, but I think farmers should stay on the farm and do what farmers do. But when I do markets, I always show people, like, do you want to see what pork's supposed to look like? And they look at it and they're like, I've never seen pork that's dark like that. This is, it's because one, they're raised on pasture. It's a breed that most people have never even heard of or can't even spell. And we feed them a varied diet. I make them work for their food sometimes. And I've fallen in love with crossing these Mangalitas. They're a riot. Their temperament's good. They don't get real ornery. They kind of warm up to you a little bit quicker than most pigs that we deal with, and that's my number one policy. I am concerned about grow out and a carcass yield, but I'll take something that grows a little slower and might take an extra month or two. I'll take that. If they have good temperament, I'll take that. Yeah. I do not like working with pigs that are super skittish and just won't do anything. We still have issues loading them on trailers, but I just basically try to load them up I give myself a 3-day buffer, put the trailer there. They go in and it's not even a chore anymore. You just back the trailer in where we load them and partition them off where I have them. And usually, where we take ours to get processed, slaughter's always on Friday. So usually Wednesday I have the trailer backed up, and there's been times where like Wednesday night they're all in there. I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste this opportunity. Close up the gate, and they're fine in there for a day or so. Sure. We give them a little bit of heat, keep them watered.
Yep, I've done the same thing.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of where we're going. It's interesting. Just out of observation, I've found that crossing, if you use a boar that's non-Mangalitsa with a Mangalitsa sow, they seem to grow better.
Okay.
And then if you have a Mangalitsa boar with a non-Mangalitsa sow, they grow out good, but not as good as the other variety. I don't know. I mean, I can't really repeat that anymore. I would like to repeat that as an experiment to see if that is repeatable. But like I said, the tiniest. Yeah, well, that's different. That's a different line. But so now where we're at in the Mangalitsa breeding program is, I kept back one of Meghan Markle's boarlings from her first litter. We ended up naming him Lucky. It was castration day and kind of middle of chicken season, so we'd like to castrate. We always say, we want to castrate 2 to 3 weeks. It's a nice spot, and sometimes it's 5 or 6, and they're obviously a lot harder to do then. And I think we had 4 boars to castrate. We got 3 of them, and I'm like, where's the 4th one? And he had actually gotten out, climbed out. We use an orchard bin. We put him in a trailer in the back of my truck. I put the gilts in the training pen to get learned to wire, and then we put the boarlings in like a orchard bin. It's just like a box. It's 25 bushels, and they usually can't get out. Well, this little guy got out, didn't make a ruckus or anything. He was just nudging at my shin, wasn't jumping back at all. He was just as calm as could be, and I picked him up. And I looked at his teat line. I looked at everything on him. He wasn't the biggest out of them, but it was that temperament thing. I'm like, he doesn't even care that I'm holding him.
Yeah.
No sweating, nothing.
Yeah. Wow.
I said, hey, buddy. I said, I think I'm going to keep you. And so I named him Lucky. And Lucky just bred one of our other Tamworth sows. And from her line, she's actually from a Tamworth, like a show pig Tamworth line. So the show pig, they got the bigger hams. And anybody that's ever seen Mangalitsa's, they're kind of funny when you look at them from the back. They look like Gru from Despicable Me.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
They're no blood at all. And we bred Lucky to our Tamworth sow Ginger. And these piglets, these are like, I like the 50% manga. So these guys are technically 25%. I'm really looking forward to see. I mean, just based on, we're going to be weaning them in about a week. Just based on where they are now, I could wean them now and they'd be fine.
Yeah.
But I'm going to wean them in a week and then breed Ginger back to Lucky, because these piglets are fantastic. And
yeah, I mean,
but
I love what you're doing there and exploring that, and especially keeping an eye on that finish weight, that finish time, and but then just trying to get the best of both worlds and find that happy medium there to say, hey, we're still getting that pork quality that we want, that redness, that marbling, that flavor, but we've increased the grow out times. And
right.
I love the way you've got it set up, that you're able to test that, so you can see. So each litter, you're getting more and more data there to say, okay, this line's working great. Hey, the 25% gives me a better grow out and still gives me good enough quality to pass. So yeah, just be exploring that. That's pretty slick.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting because there aren't too many people that raise hogs on pasture around us where we live. That there might be a handful of people that do it like on a homestead level, but they're not doing it kind of at the amount that we are. But there is still quite a presence of people that do show pigs, and it's really interesting because a girl that I went to high school with, she breeds her own pigs just for herself, and she'll sell off piglets, sell some halves and wholes here and there. I had called her to ask her where she gets semen if she does AI, because I wanted to try something different.
Mm-hmm.
And was talking to her, and she said, yeah, she goes, I think is a family I knew of. It's a family, Wilson. Well, it's Wilson Show Pigs, and they're in New Freedom, Pennsylvania. And I used to drive by that farm as a child, and always remember, oh, that's a pig farm. I can remember the smell. And she goes, yeah, Russ Wilson has a Mangalitsa, and he's like all about him. You should talk to him about it. And this is a guy who breeds show pigs. And, I told you I could talk. This guy could talk longer than me. I talked to him on the phone. I forget where I was driving. I was driving somewhere, probably to pick up broken equipment somewhere for parts. And I talked to him for about 2 hours, and he would just not go on. He goes, these Mangalitsas, he goes, you cross these guys in with the right way. He goes, this is what the pork world's looking for. You get this meat quality. He's like, it's incredible. So there's like in my backyard, somebody who actually has, 30, 40 years of expertise of actually breeding pigs and really knows what they're looking for. Like, he kind of fortified like what I'm on to. So that made me feel really good about it. And I'm always on, every now and then he'll have like boars that he has for sale and stuff. And he's always got manga crosses on there. And it's just a matter of time until I, figure out, like with Lucky, exactly where I want to go. And I might, get some new genetics in there from him. But it's just a lot of fun to do that, to actually be able to breed the pigs and, track your progression, see how they're doing. This one does well, this one doesn't do too well. It's a lot of fun. It's like, I've told my kids, like, farmers are some of the most tried and true applied scientists. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You get into the.
You look at something, if it doesn't work, okay, well, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do to change it? What do we do this? Okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try this.
Yeah.
So
good deal.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, James, let's segue here. Let's talk a little bit about the polyculture you've got going on there.
Sure.
So, yeah, in your pre-screening information, obviously not only a pretty good lineup of pigs, but you guys do a boatload of poultry. And you just mentioned you finished up turkeys today and in time for Thanksgiving. So, give us real quick an overview of what you're doing with poultry and how that helps you with the overall function of the farm, cash flow, and allows you to kind of transition to being a full-time farmer.
Yes. So, chicken is our bread and butter. This year, I think we did just under 6,000 broilers.
That's a lot of chicken.
Yeah. All raised on pasture. All raised on pasture. We started out with little well, the very first ones I did was like a scaled down Salatin version, an 8x8, and ran it through in the middle of our home farm. It's a old apple orchard. I mean, these trees are probably 200 years old, or they're just, you know, not worth really saving. But I just let the apples fall. You know, either pigs or actually turkeys really love apples. They go out to them. But anyway, so we started with broilers. First year was, I think we might have done 50 or 100, and then the next year we did about 250. The year after that was 1,000, and then right around the time when it was like, okay, quit my job or quit farming, we scaled up to around 3,000, and yeah, so that was quite a bit. And then we actually had for 2 seasons we had a grower contract with a company, and the most we did 12,000 broilers 3 years ago.
Wow.
So we sold, how many did we sell them? Was it 9? Yeah, we sold 9,000 and processed 3,000 for ourselves. We process on farm.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's also changed. Like, it changes every year. We lost that grower contract, which was a blessing in disguise. And so this year we did 6,000. And so we processed around 5,000 on our farm under exemption. And then the other 1,000 or so I sold to a processor who actually processes our pigs. He does USDA poultry slaughter and processing, and he does red meat processing.
Yeah. Excellent.
Great relationship with him. If you're within 200 miles of Gettysburg, check out the Farmstead Butcher. He's incredible, great to work with. And so he buys some broilers from me, and then kind of just sweeten the deal with him. Sometimes we'll grow out some of our broilers a little bit past 8 weeks, and they'll dress out at like 7 pounds, and I just call those sausage birds. He processes a lot of chicken sausage, so we'll sell that just to give people something different. We've got probably 5 or 6 different chicken sausage flavors, but yeah, like I said, our mainstay is chicken. That's our main driver for making money. So we usually get chicks April 1st, and we try to be done broilers by like the first week of October, because then we have turkeys, that next month.
Yeah.
So we grow enough. We try to grow enough so that we're selling out right when we start processing again, but it never works out that way. We always end up selling out in like February or March. So yeah, the chicken is kind of like our mainstay. And, talking about cash flow, my goal has been to be able to have chicken cash flow our entire operation.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet, but we were able to cash flow chicken for our operation all the way up until I think about mid-August this year. I do have a line of credit with Farm Credit that I have to use. I mean, bills are due. We've got a free, half a walk-in freezer full of chicken with pork and then some turkey stuff. I got to pay the bills, so we'll take out money from the line of credit. And then usually after turkeys hit, I'm able to pay the majority of that off. And so the nice thing is the progression is every year. It's been about a 3-year time frame on that. Every year, we're able to put off taking money out of a line of credit later and later. Like last year, it was June I had to take it out. This year was like mid-August. So following that, right before turkeys, I might have to take it out, but I might not have to. And I have a handful of other tricks up my sleeve, some value-added stuff that we're doing to hopefully not have to do that next year. Specifically in the pet food stuff, I invested. I invested in a freeze dryer and a dehydrator. I couldn't remember, but we've been running the crap out of that freeze dryer, and that just blows your mind. And that thing, it's fun. You can put. I mean, it's actually profitable for us to clean chicken gizzards.
Yeah.
I'm selling and getting. But you put in Wex. I just did a bunch of turkey gizzards. We cleaned a turkey gizzard. It weighs about 3/4 of a pound. You put them on the tray, and then you pick it up, and you ever like pick up something that you think is heavy, and it's like very light. It's the
Right.
same thing. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's a gizzard. But yeah, that's kind of how we're able to. I mean, pretty much almost cash flow our operation, and
Yeah.
just a natural progression of every year, kind of just between picking up newer customers and just our own practices. I have a huge list of projects to try to do here after turkeys between Christmas and when broiler season starts again. But yeah, it's every year it gets a little bit better.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that my ultimate goal is to be able to not have to borrow money in the middle of a season and not have to borrow money at all unless it's something that like land acquisition or something along those
Major
lines.
improvement.
Everything
Yeah.
else.
Mhm.
Yeah. Everything else we try to operate debt free.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And being able to track that is such an easy metric to follow, to say, hey, yeah, we're not having to hit the line of credit till we get to this point. And
Right.
and then that's why I just emphasize this so much on the podcast over the years, that the polyculture aspect really helps with diversity, cash flow, market dips, any of those type of things. Like you say, you lose a contract here, or you get a decline in customers that want a certain type of protein. You've got other options there. So that's
Right.
I think that diversification really helps protect us when we're growing out and trying to expand, because cash is king in that situation. So being able to expand,
Absolutely.
being able to have that cash to
Yeah.
leverage. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually something. We're actually looking at. Kind of pursuing like my childhood dream is as dairy. We eventually will have probably at least some beef cattle. I don't plan on breeding cow calf pairs or anything, but maybe just from people I know from other farmers and stuff, I could probably get some feeder steers, and that's like the missing link on our farm. The place we've been leasing from my former employer, this is our 4th season there. We've pretty much, just by running broilers on there and some turkeys, we've been able to almost eliminate all thistle. When we first got it, it was nothing but brambles. It was, all kinds of dog bane, all kinds of just weeds everywhere. And between trying to stay on top of mowing it and then running, broilers do okay if you time it right with the size, the height of the grass. But you can put turkeys on anything and they'll eat it down to like the nub.
Yeah.
And so I always joke and call them turkey lawnmowers. But I always joke with my wife. I said, if for poultry, if we could just do turkeys, I'd be really happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the truth is, chicken's a lot faster. But we have all this pasture, and to kind of manage nutrients, like I have to hay it. I made some, growing up doing beef and dairy, like knowing what good quality hay is like instinctual. And even though I don't have any ruminants to feed hay to, my favorite time of year is May, because it was always first cutting. I love that smell. I love being on a tractor and cutting hay. I love tedding hay, I like raking it. And unfortunately, I don't get to bale it. I have a neighbor that round bales it for me.
Gotcha.
But I made some beautiful hay this year, and it's like, man, what do? I need some beef, and I'll put out round bales for the sows, and even our feeder pigs. I'll put that out there in the middle of winter, and they'll eat a good amount. They really do. They burrow in it, but actually this year it was really good. With the hurricane that came through in Tennessee and North Carolina, there was a lot of guys around here, a lot of farmers. Actually, an equipment dealer kind of made a whole thing. He's like, hey, he goes, if anybody, they need hay, they need feed down there. Like, they've lost everything. And so I was just like, well, I got nothing to feed this hay to. I'm not going to really make any money on it. So I just donated. I said, hey, I don't know. I mean, I donate 20 or so, 20 or 30 4x4 round bales with this beautiful hay I made on this pasture. And I'm like, I don't want anything for it. I said, I want somebody else to be blessed with it. I've been blessed with having this pasture, this land here, raising these broilers. So, but kind of circling back, that's the missing link on our farm is some kind of room in it, because we have these absolutely beautiful pastures, and I don't want to just keep doing broilers year after year after year on that. I think that's the same thing as, to me, that's the same thing as, row crop guys doing corn on corn on corn.
Right.
It's like, you gotta get some different species in there.
Mix it up a little. Yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of like my master plan, is to kind of look into like pasture cropping and rotating species on different areas, which can be a little bit troublesome when you raise broilers in 20 by 40 houses that you built. But, I have a mechanical and an engineering background. Figure it out. Yeah. We will, and we'll figure it out to where we can tear down one of those houses, move it over to another farm. Unfortunately, those houses would not work here at my home farm. It's just the way the woods, the tree line is, and there's the ground just undulates, and
right. Yeah.
I might just have those birds free range.
Yeah.
And put them in those houses.
Right. Well, cool, man. So obviously that sounds like you've got quite a few future goals there. So I do want to just, before I let you go, because I want to be sensitive to time here, I do want to talk briefly about your lease situation. So
absolutely.
What we're finding, of course, is especially post-COVID, your property values just keep going higher and higher. Tillable acreage is just out of control right now. My goodness, I can't imagine what a tillable acre in central southern Pennsylvania is going for right now. So it's probably pretty steep. So looking at these lease options, so how have you managed to protect yourself with these leases when it comes to infrastructure improvement or anything that you're doing there to make sure as you're leasing, you're getting what you need to, but even if the property owner comes back and says, hey, it's time to kill the lease, what are some of the things you're looking for and then you make sure is in play when you're putting a lease together?
Well, I think really at the heart of that, what you have to do is you have to treat that ground like it's your own. And it's funny, sometimes I kick myself. I'm like, it seems like I spend more time at my leased ground, tending to mowing. And I have another kind of experiment over there with wood chips for trying to build up soil. Awesome. One of the reasons the reasons that I have that ground that for my former employer is it's actually a dolomitic lime quarry. So there's not a lot of overburden. There's actual like bald sections in the pasture, and there was some parts that just aren't usable.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast.
It was,
to learn more about essentially, our podcast, or to submit topics or recommend
this will probably make some people upset,
episodes.
but I think I pay, I think it's $25 an acre per year, and I have use of a barn and water and everything. It's nothing.
That's pretty nice, yeah.
It's beautiful, but to reciprocate that, we had a 3-year lease. I just re-signed a new one. I was trying to get 10 years, but it's dealing with a company. The company that owns it is overseas, and it's like, look, we're not going to be able to do a 10-year lease, but look, we know that you're taking care of this. And what I actually do is I give them a kind of like a status report annually. I put some bells and whistle stuff in there, like, we grew, I don't know, 20,000 pounds of chicken or whatever it is. I sit down, give an actual factual number. I have had soil samples done there. And, showing them like, hey, over this time, you've done, increased this percentage in organic matter. We have eliminated these, or drastically reduced these kind of noxious weeds. Poison hemlock was everywhere there. It's exceedingly rare for me to even find it Um, but kind of just giving them the, uh, you know, just a progress report of what I'm doing and being open and honest and, you know, asking permission for, I keep my breed sows at the other farm because the barn is set up for it. I mean, I eventually want to start farrowing on pasture. Unfortunately, I don't have a decent section fenced in yet over there. But we have a really nice big barnyard. I mean, it's probably 100 by 200 feet. That's where the sows are. If they're not farrowing or nursing piglets, they're outside, um, you know, and then we farrow in the barn and, wean them off. And then, but, just keeping them abreast of what you're doing with the ground and really stressing the importance of soil health and how you are managing it. And that's the priority. It does go a long way. And it's, I'm a pretty good salesman. Obviously, if we direct consumer, most farmers that are successful in this, you're good salesmen. It's interesting. I told you the company, they make refractory brick. So they're sintering dolomite, right? And it's the process of it's the same process when they make concrete. It puts out a lot of CO2, right? Say what you want, have your own thoughts on CO2 emissions, whatever. But if it's something that farming can offset,
right.
I mean, literally right there, you're leasing ground to a guy who could be siloed in the regenerative farming thing, and we're sequestering carbon, literally right next to one of the largest CO2 emitters in our county.
Right. Exactly.
Why don't you guys leverage this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that every time. I say it in a lot more corporate, friendly way, but they lease a lot of ground. They lease ground to me. They lease ground to our neighbor farm that does row crop. They used to do dairy, but now they just do beef and row crops. So that's like an angle too. Our friend, the 10 acres we picked up from friends from church was more of a just hey, it just happened. I mean, sometimes I don't have a lot of experience of actively hunting more pastured or acreage for growing crops. But I imagine a lot of times you have to know somebody.
Yeah.
And if you're able to show them, a progress of what you've done and give them a plan. And that's kind of one of the things. I mean, I am actively looking for more ground right now. I'm trying to just identify places. I mean, I drive around, I know what fields have been fallow for how long. Mm-hmm. There's one that's less than a mile from my house that's been fallow the entire time we live here. There's eastern red cedar growing up. It's like 4 feet tall.
Right.
So I'm like, fallow for at least 4 years. I think those things grow about a foot a year. So right there, so coming up with a plan and just saying, hey, I'm a farmer. I need ground. I notice you have ground. Would you like it to lease it to me? And, get creative with people, say, hey, if you're able to convince somebody to let you raise hogs on that land, that's awesome. But, you got to make sure that you have a pretty tight open for fencing.
Exactly. Yeah. Make sure they understand what a pastured operation actually is. Yeah.
It can be done. It's what's the worst they can say? No, we're not interested. All right, move on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great, man. Well, cool. I really like what you've got going on there and the head knowledge around it. Obviously, we could spend another hour talking about a variety of things, how you market your products and all that. Maybe we'll have you back on at some point and do a deeper dive into that. But that's great. So I gotta ask you. So if people are looking for more information about you, do you have an online presence that people can go find out more?
We do. We're pretty well. We have a website, ninepinesfarm.com, and we also have an online store there. I don't update it like I should as often, but our core products are there. And then my favorite way to sell it is just to have people call us to come here pick it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we do have Facebook and Instagram. I used to do a thing called Farmer Friday. Just agriculture in general is my passion, and I would talk about all the silly things that I do around here. I used to brew beer, so I have hops growing, and I would talk about that. I'd talk about composting. I used to do Farmer Friday, and unfortunately, just time. It's not enough time. I kind of stopped doing Farmer Fridays just because I'd run out of time. It's like, oh crap, it's Friday. I didn't do it. It's 7:00 and I'm just too tired.
Right.
But there's old Farmer Friday footage. We've talked about maybe doing a YouTube channel, and it's that whole time thing. But yeah, Facebook we have a decent amount, and then of course I said my wife and my mother my mother grows the flowers. My wife does the floral arrangements, and those get a lot of attention.
Oh, I bet.
My wife definitely has a lot of talent with that, and that's another revenue stream for us that frankly I forget about a lot of times. I'm like, oh, well, that's nice. You got another wedding? That's great.
Yeah, that's great. So, good deal.
Yeah, so it's out there. You just gotta poke around and figure out what works for you at your farm and your area.
Cool, good deal. Well, James, man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was a great discussion. Yeah, it sounds like you got a lot going on up there, and you really love what you do. You can tell in the voice and the way you talk about it. You're definitly passionate about what you've got going on. It's good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, Troy.
Well, I appreciate you being on. We'll talk to you soon. Well, all right. I really appreciate James coming on the podcast. Enjoyed talking with him, and may have to circle back around, do an update with him as he's got more things going on. I do like following back up with guests a year or two later and see how that goes, see how things have changed since our last conversation. Well, if you would like to be on the podcast, by all means, just use our pre-screening information. Just go to thepasturedpig.com, fill out that simple little form there, and we'll get you scheduled. And I've got several lined up in the queue already, but definitely need to have more. And also, if there's specific topics, I'm looking in 2025 to try to do some drill downs to see what people would like to do. I'd still enjoy thoroughly talking with the farmers and their individual setups. But if there's any specific topic you would like me to try to do a drill down on, even if it requires some front-end research, just give me some lead time on that, and always looking for ideas to see if I can find people that can help out. We've gotten some really good feedback from the OSU interview and that discussion, so would like to even look into those areas as well if there's academia and veterinary medicine, those type of things to get into. All right, well, I appreciate everybody listening. I pray you all have a great new year. Thank you so much. We'll see you.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of the Pastured Pig Podcast. To learn more about our podcast or to submit topics or recommend guests for future episodes,
visit redtoolhouse.com.